Hello everyone, back tuning into the 8th Winter 2019-2020 update from GWV.com. So we have done 7 updates so far for the winter of 2019-2020, including one season 1 roundup as well. So we're getting towards the business end of these updates now. We've got to get to the end of November. 13 of these winter updates are penciled in. And then on the 1st of December, we will release the winter 2019-2020 forecast. So it is getting towards the latter stage of the updates now, although we've still got a little way to go. And we're going to go through the methodology again. We're going to pick up this update, this 8th update, talking about September data once again. And there'll be a section at the end of the video, it'll be part 3, the third part of the video, that's going to have a look at the hurricane season, which is something a little bit different. I think we did it one year, maybe 2017, but haven't looked about a great deal over the winter updates over the past year, so that would be quite interesting in the third part of the video. Got 65 tabs to get through, so it's going to be another real epic. Sit back, get a comfy chair, get a cup of tea, maybe a snack or two, hopefully healthy snacks, and enjoy. We will be here for quite a while. If you can't watch it all in one go, then don't worry, the video will be put on the winter 2019-2020 updates page this evening, probably around 8 o'clock. There'll be a written summary that goes with that as well. There's going to be a live stream on YouTube between 5 and 6 o'clock talking about this winter update and taking your questions. So if you've got any questions about this winter update, then go to YouTube between 5 and 6 o'clock, Gazzo's YouTube channel, and we'll take as many questions as we can. Going to be a busy day today as well, because we're also going to have the ECM, WF, Metro France and DWD long-range season model update, as well as another update for Christmas. So a lot coming up today at Gazzo's. Do keep checking back to all of it. Big thank you to Anomalies guru James Ackrill. We couldn't do the updates as we do them now without James's input, so a huge thank you to James for getting the analogs together for us. Big thank you as well to our good friend Richard Short for the Gazworthy's Winter 2019-2020 updates gift. And with so much to talk about, I think we had better get on with the 8th Winter 2019-2020 update. So we're going to be talking about September precipitation, September rainfall, for the first part of this 8th Winter 2019-2020 update. Now, last week, you'll remember, we discussed September in terms of England and Wales precipitation. Had quite a wet September. But what was interesting is that a lot of that rain actually fell in, like, the last 10 days or so of the month. So it's around the 20th. It was actually relatively dry September, and then it's later on in the month that it started to get really very wet. When it did get wet, it got very, very wet. So another way that you can look at monthly rainfall is through rain days. And so that's what we're going to do for this part 1 of this update. We're going to look at September rain days in September 2019, look at past years that had similar September rain days, and then we will have a look at winters that followed those September. So September 2019 had 15.4 days that had 1 millimetre or more rainfall. So that's quite a high number, I think, actually, for September. So a year that had a similar amount of September rain days was actually September 1961. That came out very close to the rain day number that we had for September 2019. And so this is how the winter of 1961-62 looks. By the way, this rain day data only goes back to the 1960s, so it's one of the more recent, if you like, things that we can look at. It doesn't go a long way back, not like the England and Wales precipitation, but it's useful, I think, to have a look at September rain days in what is quite an unusual month that was fairly dry in the first half of the month, then became a lot wetter in the second half. So our first winter is 61-62, following September rain days around or similar to September 2019. This winter, 61-62, is before the daddy of cold winters, of course, so it's a little bit forgotten, but it's a fairly cool winter late on, actually. It has below average heights extending down from the north in central parts of Europe, with above average heights in the Atlantic and going up to Greenland, and that leaves us doing something a little bit like that with the flow and with the jet stream. It's quite cold, actually, around Christmas of 1961. Then it goes through a milder, stormier phase through January and into early February. Then it gets a lot colder again late February and into March 1962. The next year that had a similar number of September rain days to 2019 was actually September 1962. And so for the very first time this in this season of winter updates, we've waited a very, very long time to see it, but for the very first time we have the daddy of cold winters. It's 1962-1963 turning up in our Analogues package, the coldest winter since 1740, freezing cold, with a jet stream pushed down into southern Spain and North Africa, and this blocking area of high pressure that just went nowhere fast, sitting within the northern latitudes, bringing in those bitterly cold easy winds. So for the first time this season, we've waited a long time, that is the daddy of cold winters, 1962-1963, in our September rain days analogues package. The next September, with a similar number of rain days to September 2019, is that of 1965. A winter of 1965-1966 looks like this. Very unsettled winter with low pressure close to the country. It does have blocking, though, up to the north. This winter has quite a coldish December in 1965. And there's a bitterly cold spell of easterly winds in January of 1966. Has a white Christmas, some of us as well, I think, in 1965. Then it gets a lot milder, and the rest of the winter is just mild and wet. So it has its moments. It's not one of the coldest winters of the 1960s, though. The next September, with a similar amount of rain days to September 2019, is September 1967. This is how the winter of 1967-1968 is looking. So this is quite a coldish winter, actually. It has below average heights out in the Atlantic. Above average heights, I should say, out in the Atlantic. It has below average heights to the east and northeast of us. So you can imagine we're bringing in winds from a northerly direction. It's an on-off winter. It's not continuously cold, but it does have several quite potent cold snaps within it. Next we go to 1968-1969 in our September rain days analogues package. This one is quite a cold winter. It has blocking signals to the north through this winter, with below average heights to the south. Generally we're pulling in cold winds from an east or northeasterly direction. So this is quite an interesting winter. It has a classic white Christmas. It has a freezing cold February as well in 1969. In between, though, it has a mild and wet January, but with northern blocking. So quite a funny month in January 1969. Next up is 1971. So this one with above average height sitting to the north of us and bringing in some easterly winds. This is quite a cold early part of winter. Again, it has a bit of a white Christmas in 1970, but then after Christmas it gets milder. The rest of winter is generally mild and dry. Then we've got 1974-1975. So this one is a very mild winter with below average heights out to the northwest and above average heights building across the UK and much of Europe. This is the beginning of the great drought, of course, that lasted throughout the 1970s. The first dry season, very dry season during that mid-70s period was the winter of 74, 75. So this is an unusual combination in that it's a very mild winter. It's also a very dry winter with high pressure in control, but sitting to the south of us. The next winter is 75, 76 in our September rain days analogues package. This one, again, an anticyclonic winter. The drought goes on, this time the above average height sitting over just a little bit to the west of us, lots of low pressure up to the north, bringing plenty of rain up there and into Eastern Europe as well. But for us, we're under that ridge of high pressure, and it's another mild and dry winter, 75, 76. Next winter is 1980, 1981, following September rain days, similar to September 2019, and this one has above average heights pulled out into the middle of the Atlantic. Below average heights are up to the northwest, and again we're bringing winds from the northwest. It has cold snaps in this winter, although it's not a particularly cold winter. Then we have 1981, 1982. This is masking, of course, what was a bitterly cold first half to the winter. So you look at it and you think, well, it's probably a relatively mild and wet winter, but the blocking signal up here does give the game away, because December 1981 is very cold. It has a severely cold spell with blizzards during the first half of January 1982. But then when the cold goes, after the middle of January 1982, it doesn't come back, and the rest of the winter actually turns very mild through late January and into February. Next winter is 82, 83. This one is quite an unsettled winter. It has above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic, below average heights right to the north. It's a westerly winter, very stormy around Christmas and New Year of 82, 83. And then it gets quite a lot colder in February, and that cold weather lasts into the spring. Next up is 83, 84. So this is a cold zonal winter. This is a very unusual winter with below average heights in the Atlantic and into much of northern Europe, above average heights, central Atlantic, the jet streams lining up northwest to southeast. It pulls out unusually cold air out of Canada and moves it across the Atlantic. So this has unusually cold westerly winds. It's an Atlantic-driven westerly zonal winter, but an unusually cold variety of it. Very different winter in 83, 84. Next up is 84, 85. So quite a lot in the 1980s within this analogues package, looking at September rain days, with September 2019 having 15.4 rain days. This winter is a cold winter again. So interesting that we've got 62, 63 and 84, 85 showing up in our analogues package. This is another cold winter with above average heights to the north, below average heights to the south, bringing in those easy winds. That's a very cold winter in the middle of the 1980s, 84, 85. Quite a gap then to 92, 93. This is a very banal sort of winter with above average heights just sticking around northern Europe. Below average heights are up to the north. Nothing much goes on all winter during 92, 93. Although it does have quite a stormy spell just after New Year in January 1993. 94, 95 is next up. This one, again, with lots of low pressure to the north, a strong ridge to the south. This is another of those westerly 1990s winters. There were a lot of them, I can tell you that. This one is a mild, wet, and very unsettled winter in 94, 95. Then we've got 95, 96, so another cold winter is showing up here. Quite interesting, isn't it, that these cold winters are recurring relatively frequently now within this analogues package. This one has high pressure over Scandinavia and to the north of the country, and below average heights to our south. We're bringing in cold easterly winds, especially cold in December, and particularly around Christmas and New Year, freezing cold then. And then the cold is on and off through January and February and even March and April, coming and going, bringing regular periods of snow, but also periods of moderation in between. There aren't many cold winters in the 1990s, but that is one of them. Then we're into 1999-2000. Now, from memory, I think that the September that's just gone, September 2019, actually has a lot in common with September 1999, in that it was a very warm, dry first half to September 1999, and then it got really wet in the second half. On the other hand, though, September 2019 wasn't as hot in the first half as the first half of September 1999 was. Anyway, this is how the winter of 1999-2000 looks. It's another one of those westerly, zonal and mild 1990s winters. Here we go again, bringing in the westerly winds. So that's a mild winter to close out the 20th century. And then we've got 2000, 2001. So this one, we talk about this quite a lot. I think has cropped up a fair amount actually in our analogues package. It's nearly a very cold winter. It has this low pressure and the jet stream sort of going to the south, and it does have blocking up to the north. For Scotland, it is actually really quite a cold winter. Has a cold Christmas. Again, that may be a little bit of a pattern within this analogues package. Colder around Christmas time, maybe. So it does have a cold Christmas, and then it has a very snowy spell, a severe spell of weather actually, in the first week, 10 days of February 2001, and then again quite cold in March of 2001 too. It's very nearly a cold winter, but just doesn't quite make it to that level, except for Scotland, where it is, I think, a genuinely cold winter. And then we've got 2010, 2011 turning up in our analogues package. So, of course, this contains the December to remember in 2010. So we've got the above average heights around Greenland and to our north. Below average heights are down to our southwest. So we know what happens here. It's extraordinarily cold in December of 2010. That's why it's the December to remember. It's very nearly the coldest December in the CT record all the way back to 1659. But then when the cold goes after Christmas, it doesn't come back, and it actually finishes up a very mild winter in February of 2011. And then finally, for our analogues package for the September rain days, we have winter of 2011-2012. This one is a relatively mild winter with above average heights out to our west, below average heights sort of extending through the eastern part of Europe. Very cold winter in the Balkans and across the eastern parts of Europe. For us, it's actually a milder winter in that period from 2008, 09 to 2012, 2013. There are several cold winters. This one actually lifts its foot off the pedal and is a rather milder winter, 2011, 2012. Putting all of that together then, this is how all Decembers combined are looking when we have September rain days a similar number of September rain days to September 2019. And it looks quite a coolish and unsettled signal for December, actually. It has below average heights extending through the east of the country. Above average heights are out in the Atlantic and going up to Greenland. So you've got to envisage we're pulling in quite cool or even fairly cold north to northwesterly winds there in December. So it could be rather cool and unsettled month. That's how all Januaries combined are looking with our September rain days analogues package. So we have above average heights, more I think towards the Canadian side of Greenland. Below average heights are again extending to our east, but also a little bit to our south. So I think it's a rather more unsettled and possibly slightly westerly signal for January. Not a particularly cold signal, I wouldn't have thought, for January. However, look what happens as we get through to February. And this has been a recurring theme with this year's winter updates. In February, it seems that on average, because there are years that are deviating, we know that 81-82 is within this analogues package, for example, and that was a very mild February after a cold December. But on average, combining all of these years together, you expect to get above average heights centering to the north of Scotland and below average heights with jet stream going to the south. And so February could be bringing in an increased chance, anyway, of colder easterly winds. And then it continues into March, February and March, though potentially potentially signalled to be quite cold here with this September rain days analogues package, with above average heights towards Greenland, Iceland, and below average heights tending to be to our south. Again, we're tending to pull in quite cold east or northeasterly winds in the all marches combined. And then finally, bring all of that together. So this is how all winters combined are looking, with September rain days similar to the number of September rain days that we had in September 2019. And it does look as though it could be a relatively coldish signal, actually. It has above average heights out to the northwest. It has below average heights to our east. So you would think we're probably bringing in easterly winds. It also has a low pressure down here, or below average heights towards the Azores. So it implies that the AO and the NAO in particular on the negative side. And yeah, it does look as though it could be a rather coldish sort of signal when we have this number of rain days in September. Right, so that's it. We'll talk for 20 minutes. So I'm going to pause the video there, and we'll go and get ourselves a little drink and maybe a snack, and we'll meet back in 2 minutes' time, and we will talk about some more of the GWV's winter 2019-2020 methodology. We're going to talk about things like sea surface temperature anomalies, Siberian and Eurasian snow cover, and several other things as well. So I'll see you back here very, very shortly. Okay, we're back, and we are ready to resume the 8th Winter 2019-2020 update from GWV. So before the break, we was talking about September analogues and September rain days, similar to the number of rain days that we had during September 2019 and the winter that followed those rain days. So quite an interesting package of analogues, I think. It was quite notable that cold winters were cropping up relatively frequently with that analogues package. Although overall, again, similar to what we've seen over the past few weeks, actually, the overall analogues package probably wasn't overly cold. It did get colder later, though. That's been a recurring theme with our analogues this year. And just a minority, but a notable minority of cold or very cold winters, including, for the first time this season, the daddy of cold winters, 61-62. Right, 62-63, I should say. Right, so that is it for September data. I don't think we'll be looking at any more for September from now on. I think pretty much exhausted everything that we can look at in terms of September. Let's go on then and have a look at the rest of the GWV's winter 2019-2020 update methodology and forecast methodology. So starting off with what's happening in the stratosphere over the North Pole. This is from the JMA, and it's showing temperatures at 10 HPA over the North Pole set against the long-term average. So the grey line is depicting the average temperature at 10 HPA, which is kind of like the top level of the atmosphere in the stratosphere. And of course, we're in a cooling time of year. Temperatures should be getting colder and colder through to the end of December and the start of January. But you can see that from the black line, which is the current, this year's current temperature, you can see we're actually a bit colder than average now. So we do have quite a cold temperature indeed at 10 HPA. We're down to around minus 70, which is below average for this point in the year. Should be around minus 65. So colder than average in terms of temperature at 10 HPA. And if we go a bit lower down to 30 HPA, also a little bit colder than average there as well. So this tells us that I have got a cold stratosphere at the moment, and you would normally associate that with a powering up of the polar vortex. Now, if we have a look at this chart, which is from weatheriscool.com, this is depicting the zonal winds, which is kind of like another way of looking at the strength of the zonal of the zonal flow of the polar vortex. So this is looking again at 10 HPA over the Arctic and over the North Pole. So when you've got a strong zonal wind, you will have an increase in the polar vortex, and normally that's associated with a cold stratospheric temperature. Conversely, when you have a weak zonal wind, when the zonal winds are weak, or even in reverse, then you will have a weakened polar vortex at its roots in the stratosphere. So there's lots of coloured lines here. I haven't got time to tell you what all of them are showing, but if you want to know, do have a look at the first winter 2019-2020 update, which goes into each individual line in depth. The most important one, I suppose, is the black line. That's the trend line. So you can see at this time of year, the strength of the zone of winds is increasing. The zone of wind is getting stronger through to the winter as the polar vortex powers up. And of course, that happens, but the zone of winds gets stronger as the temperature gets colder in the stratosphere. So as the temperature gets colder, the zone of winds get stronger. Now at the moment, we're actually stronger than average with the zone of wind, quite interestingly. The blue line shows where we are right now, so that is where we are right now. GFS ensembles are forecasting the zone of winds to stay around, or maybe a little bit stronger than average as well for the next couple of weeks. This is October, by the way. That's November just there, that's December, and that's as far as we can go with this at the moment, to January just there. And certainly for the next couple of weeks, the zone of winds the rest of October are forecast to be either stronger than average or close to average. Now, the rest of the coloured lines, the 3 pink and the 1 blue line, they're from the CFS V2. So this is like a forecast of what CFS, the 4 CFS V2 members are forecasting the zone of winds to do. So again, we've got November just here, we've got December just there, we've got January just there. It looks like overall this update today, the zone of winds are forecast to be generally on quite a strong sort of level, very close to that black line. We do have a couple of the CFS V2 members there and there, but are going a little bit weaker through the course of November with the zone of winds, but they aren't going into reverse, and then it looks like they power up anyway as we go through into the winter. So at the moment, it looks like the CFS V2 is forecasting quite a strong zone of wind at 10 HPA, which would imply certainly the first part of the winter could be dominated by quite a strong polar vortex and quite strong westerly winds. And this is the Arctic Oscillation Observed and Forecast chart from NOAA. So when you've got a cold an average stratospheric temperature at this time of year, along with a stronger than average zone of winds, you would normally expect to have a very strong polar vortex in the stratosphere and going down into the troposphere, and that would normally be indicated on here by a positive Arctic oscillation, because when the Arctic oscillation is just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state, it's not driving anything in its own terms, it just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. Now when the Arctic oscillation is in its positive phase, you will normally have a strong polar vortex routed to Greenland and up into the Arctic, that will be powered up by those cold stratospheric temperatures and also by those strengthened zonal winds. Actually, what we've got at the moment is slightly on the negative side. The Arctic oscillation is slightly on the negative side at the moment, and the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to stay negative and possibly to become even more negative as we go towards like the end of October. So this would imply an increase in the blocking signal over the Arctic, which is quite unusual when you've got zonal winds that are stronger than average and temperatures at 10 HPA in the North Pole. Colder than average. So we're seeing a disconnect here between the troposphere and the stratosphere. The troposphere is the boundary level of the atmosphere where weather is taking place, and that's where the Arctic oscillation observed and forecast is looking. The stratosphere is further up, but the stratosphere is what tends to power the troposphere, if you like. So a little bit of a disconnect going on, if that's right, between what's happening in the stratosphere, where we're seeing a zonal signal, what's happening in the troposphere, where we're seeing a blocking signal. Something that we're seeing a little bit of over the past few winters, actually. At the same time, the NAO continues to be in this extended and prolonged negative phase. So we've talked about this a lot over the past few weeks. A lot of the analogues that we've looked at through these winter updates so far have been looking at the North Atlantic Oscillation when it's in a prolonged negative phase, and it just goes on. So this prolonged negative phase of the NAO started back in the spring, carried on all the way through the summer, the whole of the summer, was a negative NAO summer until like the last couple of weeks of August, when it went a little bit positive, and that carried on into the first half of September. But from mid-September, again, the NAO has been in its negative phase. That's where it is right now, negative. The GFS ensembles are forecasting it to stay negative more or less to the end of the month now. And possibly to become even more negative. It looks like, if anything, the GFS ensembles are lowering the NAO down to that sort of level, perhaps, by the last days of the month. So, again, this is not something you would expect to see with a stratospheric signal that is quite zonal. So it's unusual, it's complicated, and if this was to go on into winter, which it probably won't, but if it was, then it would make things very difficult when it comes to the winter forecast. But I think what is very, very notable is that this negative phase of the NAO, which started back in late April, just goes on, and there's no sign at all there that we're going to come out of it, certainly in the next couple of weeks. So up to the end of October, looks like this prolonged negative phase of the North Atlantic Oscillation will continue. So have a look at the oceans next, and this is how the sea surface temperature anomalies in the ocean are looking, or were looking last week when we did last week's 7th winter 2019-2020 update. And what we see, or what we saw last week, was that we've got our three areas of interest. Of course, we've got the ENSO region just here. We've got the Northern Pacific just there. We've got the North Atlantic over there. This signal for a weak La Nina in the eastern part of the Equatorial Pacific, we called it, was weakening, but was still there to some degree. That's how the oceans looked last week. This is how the oceans are looking now. Let's deal with the ENSO region first of all. So going back to last week, we can see quite a coldish signal there in the eastern part of the Equatorial Pacific, milder, warmer out there in the central western part of the Equatorial Pacific. Now we see that cold area shrinking and to some degree being replaced by above average sea surface temperature anomalies. So all of a sudden, it's quite a change over the past week. This area has definitely warmed really quite significantly. And you wouldn't say that that is a signal for El Nino at all. It's far too weak for that. But certainly it has backed away very, very quickly and very, very rapidly, the Equatorial Pacific, backed away from any La Nina signal. So that, I think, definitely now is off the table. There's not going to be a La Nina, even a very weak one, for the winter of 2019-2020. It's either going to be ENSO neutral, and there's an outside chance we may have a weak El Nino setting up for this winter. I would be surprised because it's very late now to be able to do that. But definitely ENSO neutral, probably on the warm side of ENSO neutral as well. In the Northern Pacific, that's how things looked last week up there in this northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean. Let's have a look at the latest. Very little change. It remains much warmer than average through these deeper waters of the northeastern Pacific Ocean. Although around the coast of Canada and America, it is getting a little bit colder there. But those are shallow waters, and they are impacted by weather conditions, really. So I don't think we can take into account what's going on there particularly. That's going to be impacted by sort of weather conditions very close to the coast of America and Canada. It's always in those deeper waters that we have to be more concerned about. And then over in the North Atlantic, again, if I take you back to last week, that's how things looked last week in the North Atlantic, around here, and then this is how things are looking now. So this colder than average area sea surface temperature anomalies is still there, kind of like off the coast of Newfoundland around here and out into the middle of the Northern Atlantic Ocean. Looks relatively warm down through the tropics as well down there, and to the south of Greenland it is a little bit warmer there too, so probably not all that far away from an emerging tripole perhaps. What do we think? Warmer there, cooler there, and then perhaps warmer there. You would want to see this cooler area expanding out and definitely getting closer towards the eastern coast of America though. So all of this area wants to go quite cold and possibly over to there as well. You will want to see this area getting warmer really as well, and then this area getting warmer too. Probably not all that far away, though, from an emerging tripole cincher, and we will keep a very close eye on that, of course, over the next few weeks. Just want to compare the current situation in the Atlantic to past years. So this is how things are looking in the North Atlantic. Don't take into account what's happening in the Pacific. Just focus on the North Atlantic. So this is the area I want you to focus on. We'll probably have a look at the Pacific in another update, but that's the area I want you to focus on for this update. So at this point last year, it was a lot colder than at the moment to the south of Greenland, quite cold around there. Otherwise, most of the Atlantic was close to average. So you see we've got a warmer Atlantic definitely this year compared to last year. So let's go through to 2017. This is how things were looking at this point in 2017. Probably quite closely matched actually to this point in 2017. Although I think the Atlantic this year is again warmer than it was at this point in 2017. That's 2016. I think we're warmer than that. Definitely south of Greenland. 2015. I think again we're warmer than 2015 overall in the North Atlantic. That is 2014. So again, what do you think about that? I think overall the Atlantic is probably a bit warmer this year than at this point in 2014. That's 2013, and maybe relatively closely matched actually to 2013, although I'm not sure. I think definitely down in the tropics it might be a little bit warmer compared to this point in 2013. That's 2012. That's the last time we had a really warm Atlantic in 2012. Interestingly, whoops, that went wrong. So the last time I had a really warm Atlantic in 2012 was in 2012. Situation this year to 2012, it's warmer in 2012 than it is this year. So the warm Atlantic, the milder than average Atlantic we've got at the moment doesn't go to the extent that it did in 2012. That's 2011. I think we're warmer than 2011. That's 2010. Good tripole signature in October 2010. Warm there, cool there, and then warm down here, setting up, of course, the pattern for December to remember. What do we think about this year compared to 2010? Well, the tripod is definitely better at this point in 2010. 2009, notice how 2009 doesn't have a tripole signal, but it is getting colder around Newfoundland. This crept up on us through the autumn of 2009. So no tripole at that point, but the colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies around Newfoundland possibly give us an indication of what's going to happen in the winter. Compared to this year, the Atlantic is actually warmer, I think, than 2009, and not as cold towards Newfoundland. 2008, the Atlantic is warmer than that year. 2007, not much comparison. 2006. 2005, what do you think about 2005? Not bad match, actually, but I think it's warmer overall in 2005 compared to this year. 2004, again, probably warmer in 2004 and in 2003. This is the peak of the warm AMO, of course. 2002 is quite interesting. So that's how we look this year. That's how we look 2002. I think overall the Atlantic is warmer, particularly in the tropics this year than it was in 2002. That's 2001. Again, probably warmer this year. 2001. That's 2000. Notice how as we go further out, the projection is changing. Much colder in the Atlantic in 2000 compared to this year. 1999 and 1998 looking like that. So, I think we've got a pretty warm Atlantic. We've established that. Some of those years are warmer than this year, but not all that many of them, actually. It is quite a warm Atlantic, I think, that we've got this year. Going even further back, that's how things looked in October 1995. No sign of a tripod whatsoever. That's 1994. Again, much colder Atlantic in 1994. We're going back into the period of the cold AMO now. 1993, 1992 and 1991, very cold sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic, discounted really because of the eruption of Mount Pinatubo, which did have a cooling effect on the oceans. We go through to 1990, and again, it's colder to the south of Greenland than it is this year in 1990, October 1990. October 89 looks like that. October 88. Notice how many of these years back into the late 80s have got cold sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic. That's because we're to the era of the cold AMO. 1987 is a warmer year for the Atlantic. Of course, that the storm of 1987 in October 1986 looks like that. 1984, really cold sea surface temperature anomalies in October 1984, particularly through the tropical Atlantic. And in 1983, and as far back as we can go to 1982, again, we see particularly the tropical Atlantic much, much colder in October 1982 than it is this year. So we've got a pretty warm Atlantic. We haven't got a classic tripole signal, and I think what we're going to be looking for over the next few weeks is see if we can start getting it colder around there. Otherwise, it's relatively warm through there, and it's still pretty warm to the south of Greenland as well. This is the SOI, the Southern Oscillation Index. So this is an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state in the southern Pacific Ocean. When the SOI is in its negative phase, then the atmosphere is going to be reflective of El Nino. When the SOI is in its positive phase, the atmosphere will be reflective of La Nina. So if you scroll down to the latest numbers, we can see that what's going on at the moment is that we're trading negative and positive numbers. So the 11th of October came out at minus 4.32. That's an atmospheric state in the Pacific Ocean that's reflective of El Nino. On the 13th, though, we went to a La Nina type atmospheric state at plus 8.12. The 15th goes negative again at minus 13.36. And then the 17th goes positive at plus 2. 18th positive at plus 2. And then the 19th, the latest day that we've got from Queensland government, is to plus 10.63. And that's the atmospheric state going into more of a La Nina type setup. So trading negative and positive numbers, this would tend to imply that the atmospheric setup in the Southern Ocean is neither sort of consistently El Nino or La Nina based, and that would tend to be what you'd expect to see with ENSO neutral. Notice how this red line, which is the 30-day average of the SOI, has gone from being very negative back in the middle of September to being still negative, but a lot less negative as we've gone into the second half of October. That's 19th October, just there. The SOI 30-day average is coming up, and again, it's still negative, but it would imply that we are sort of reaching an ENSO neutral type setup. This is showing the QBO, so we think we're descending from a west to an east QBO through this winter. We think it will be a winter that transitions from a westerly to an easterly QBO. On this chart, easterly QBOs are depicted by these blue areas. Westerly QBOs are depicted by the browny sandy coloured areas. So we can see that of course, we've got the sort of layers of the atmosphere just here. So again, that's 10 HPA up in the stratosphere, that's down on the surface. These events, be it westerly or easterly QBOs, start at the top of the atmosphere and descend down. To go into the easterly QBO, we've got to get it down to around 30 to 50 HPA. That's the all-important level of the atmosphere that we've got to get this down to. So you can see this blue area just here. That's the start of the easterly QBO in the top of the atmosphere in the stratosphere. You can see how these blue bars, this is depicting each individual day's QBO number. You see how these blue bars are gradually getting lower from where they are just there to where the blue to green bars are just there. You can see they gradually begin to force their way down, not yet reaching 30 HPA, but this eastern QBO is on its way. There was a bit of concern last month that we might be seeing a stall of the ECQBO, but I think we can see that descending through the levels of the atmosphere, this easterly QBO is moving downwards. It is propagating downwards from the stratosphere into the troposphere. So again, I see no reason why we should have a failure of the ECQBO. I think the winter of 2019-2020 will be a west to east transitioning QBO winter. Remember, it's an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state in terms of the strength of the zone westerlies. We're in a westerly QBO. The zone westerlies are strengthened. Easterly QBO, zone westerlies are weakened. So an easterly QBO enhances, doesn't guarantee anything, but enhances your chance of a colder winter. This is how the solar disk is looking on our side of this today from solarham.net. No sunspots whatsoever. It's a spotless solar disk once again. Therefore, solar activity is at very low levels and is expected to remain at very low levels for the next 3 days. This is GWV's 8th winter update solar activity tracker, updated to the 20th of October by our good friend James Ackrill. And we can see again confirmation that we are at solar minimum. Our trend lines are the thick red and thick green lines. They are on the floor of the chart, with these orange lines just here showing each individual day's worth of sunspots. So very few days at the moment have got sunspots compared to earlier in the year, where we did have many days with sunspots, albeit a very, very low number of them. But now the days that don't have sunspots are outnumbering the days that do. And so therefore this tells us that we are into solar minimum. We probably went into solar minimum, but we did go into solar minimum, I think, back in the month of May. And again, we see that the trend lines are just flatlining away on the floor of the chart. So solar minimum has well and truly descended upon us. This is from our good friend Richard Trott. This is showing the spotless days by year. So for 2019, we have currently had 216 days without any sunspots so far this year. That is 74% of the year, and that tells us that we are in deep, deep solar minimum. I think the deepest solar minimum in the modern era has 73% of the year without any sunspots. So we're actually beating that at the moment. Of course, I think that's 2008 as well. So I think we're beating that actually, but of course we've got a couple of months left for 2019. But deep, deep solar minimum. Now 216 days without any sunspots, 74% of the year. Solar minimum is well and truly upon us, and this is a deep solar minimum as well. Thank you to James for updating the solar tracker. Thank you to Richard for updating the visible sunspot regions by year chart. And next week we're doing our solar special as well, so that's going to be a really interesting watch. That's a 9th winter update, just 1 week away. We're going to be going in depth into what solar minimum means potentially for this winter. So I think that's going to be an absolutely fascinating watch next week. Put it in your diary. And then lastly, for this second part of the 8th Winter 2019-2020 update, we're going to look at Siberian and Eurasian snow cover. So this is how things were looking across Eurasia last week on the 11th of October. We did last week's 7th winter update. So we see that snow covered over here, with some snow cover across Scandinavia and northwestern parts of Russia as well. This is the very latest. So we've actually increased the snow cover a little bit across Scandinavia, interestingly. We've lost it a bit in the northwest of Russia, but gained it a little bit there. And over in Siberia, we've actually seen a bit of a stall of snow cover. Hasn't spread as far westwards as you might have expected it to do over the past week. So I think we can see clearly that snow cover has stalled across Siberia, but we have gained a little bit, I think, over Scandinavia, but lost it across northwestern Russia. Let's compare the current situation to past years. So that's how things are looking at this point in 2018. So I think we're ahead of 2018, actually. Definitely for Scandinavian snow cover, possibly for Siberian snow cover as well. That's 2017. We're ahead of 2017 for Scandinavian snow cover. Probably a bit behind it for Siberian snow cover. That's 2016. We are behind, I should say, 2016 for Siberian snow cover. And probably ahead of it for Scandinavian snow cover, though. That's 2015, so we are well behind 2015 for Siberian and Russian snow cover. But what we can say, if we go there, we are ahead of it for Scandinavian snow cover. That's 2014, well behind 2014, I think, for both Russian Siberian snow cover, and also for Scandinavian snow cover. That's 2013. We are behind 2013 for Russian snow cover as well. That's 2012. So at this point in 2012, we was having a bit of a stall in snow cover across eastern parts of Russia, and for Scandinavia, we're probably ahead of 2012. For 2011, that's how we're looking. So I think we're ahead of 2011 for Russian snow cover and for Scandinavian snow cover too. That's 2010, probably quite closely matched actually to 2010. That could be the closest match so far. That's 2009. We're behind 2009 for Scandinavian snow cover, probably very closely matched to it or even ahead of it for Russian snow cover. Then we go through to 2008, so we're ahead of 2008 for Scandinavian snow cover and also for Russian snow cover as well. That's 2007, ahead of 2007 for Scandinavian snow cover, ahead of it for Russian snow cover as well. Ahead of 2006 for Scandinavian snow cover, behind it for Russian snow cover. Ahead of 2005 for both Russian, Siberian and also Scandinavian snow cover. Behind 2004 for Russian snow cover, but ahead of 2004 Scandinavian snow cover. 2003, we're ahead of 2003 for both Russian, Siberian and also Scandinavian snow cover. Behind 2002 for Russian snow cover, probably quite close to it, Scandinavian snow cover. That's 2001, so probably quite closely matched to 2001 for Russian snow cover, but behind it for Scandinavia. Ahead of 2000 for Scandinavian snow cover and also for Russian snow cover, and then that's 1999 finally. So I think we're a little bit ahead of 1999 for both Russian, Siberian and also Scandinavian snow cover as well. And of course that brings to a close part 2 of this 8th Winter 2019-2020 update. So I'm going to pause the video again there, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Atlantic hurricane activity, which is something we haven't discussed all that much over the years. I think we did look at it in depth one year in possibly 2017, but we haven't really talked about Atlantic hurricane activity in terms of analogues and that kind of thing, which is what we're going to do for part 3 of this 8th Winter 2019-2020 update. Pause the video there then, go and get yourself another cup of tea, and we'll meet back for the 3rd and final part of this 8th Winter update in around 2 seconds' time. Alright, we're back, and we are ready to resume the 3rd and final part of the 8th Winter 2019-2020 update. I hope you've enjoyed the video so far. Another epic. You have to let me know in the comments and in the live stream what you thought to this update, and fingers crossed you've all enjoyed it. For this third and final part, we're going to talk about Atlantic hurricane activity. So we're on the 2019 Atlantic hurricane seasons page, of course, at Wikipedia. We look at this every week. So these are the current numbers for this hurricane season. We currently stand at 16 total depressions, 14 total tropical storms. I think those are both up one on last week. 5 hurricanes, which is unchanged, no change on last week, and 3 major category 3 or above hurricanes, which is unchanged on last year. So what sort of hurricane season are we having this year? We need to go to this page, which is the accumulated cyclone energy page at Wikipedia. Just to explain the reason we're looking at Atlantic hurricane activity is because there's a theory that what hurricanes are doing is essentially they're transporting heat from the tropics to the polar regions. So the hurricanes are forming around here in tropical storms. They form just there. They distribute heat from the tropics and move it northwards, essentially. Now, whether they go in that sort of direction, or whether they do something like that, or whether they do something like that, in the end, all of these storms and hurricanes are going to finish up as areas of low pressure in the North Atlantic and heading up towards Greenland and heading up towards Norway and into Arctic regions. So essentially what a hurricane is doing is distributing heat from the tropics to the mid-latitudes and then ultimately to the polar regions. When you get lots of storms and hurricanes distributing lots of heat to the mid-latitudes and eventually to the polar regions, that can translate back during the winter to an increased risk of blocking in the troposphere. That's the theory, and it's a Joe Bastardi theory, famous Joe Bastardi from AccuWeather.com. So one of the ways we can see what sort of strength of hurricane season we're having is through accumulated cyclone energy. So this is the ACE page at Wikipedia, and they say accumulated cyclone energy, ACE, is a measure used by various agencies including National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and East India Meteorological Department to express the activity of individual tropical cyclones and entire tropical cyclone seasons. It uses an approximation of wind energy used by a tropical storm over its lifetime and is calculated every 6 hours. The ACE of the season is the sum of the ACEs for each storm and takes into account the number, strength, and duration of all tropical storms in the season. So it's kind of like a way of measuring the strength both of individual storms and then accumulated over the course of a season. Now, if we go down here to Atlantic hurricane seasons from 1851 to 2019, what they say is due to the scarcity and imprecision of early offshore measurements, ACE data for Atlantic hurricane season is less reliable prior to the modern satellite era, but NOAA has analysed the best available information dating back to 1851. 1933 Atlantic hurricane season is considered to be the highest ACE on record with a total of 259. So the current season, or the season that has just ended, ACE is preliminary based by National Hurricane Center bulletins, which may be revised. So let's deal with the first year that we got here, 1851. That has an ACE of just 36.24, has only 6 tropical storms, 3 hurricanes, and just 1 major Category 3 or above hurricane. Therefore, that is a below normal season. Conversely, 1852 has an ACE of 73.28, so it's higher with the ACE. It's also higher with tropical storm number at 5 and hurricane number at 5 again. Same for major Category 3 or above hurricanes coming out at near normal. And so we go through the decades and we see, start off with, there's lots of blue and white, below normal or near normal. Our first hyperactive season is 1878 with an ACE of 180.85, 12 tropical storms, 10 hurricanes, and 2 major Category 3 or above hurricanes. That's a hyperactive year. Well, let's scroll all the way down to our current year. We're going to go down all the way through the decades 2019, and that's where we are for this season, 2019, with an ACE of 119.4525, a total of 14 storms, 5 hurricanes, and 3 Category 3 or above hurricanes. The current season, therefore, is above normal, similar in some ways to 2018, which had an ACE of 132.5825, 15 hurricanes, 15 tropical storms, I should say, 8 hurricanes, and 2 major Category 3 or above hurricanes. 2017 was hyperactive with an ACE of 224, 17 tropical storms, 10 hurricanes, and 6 major Category 3 or above hurricanes. So for this season, the years that we've got to look at are the above normal but not hyperactive seasons. So above normal, yes, in those yellow boxes, but not hyperactive. So not a mega year, but above normal activity and above average ACE. So let's have a look at those years and the winters that followed them then. So the first one, which was above normal in terms of the hurricane season, was 1916. The winter of 1916-1917 looks like this. It's a cold winter. Aren't all that many of them in the first 40 years of the 20th century, but this is one of them, with below average heights to our south and above average heights blocking to the north and bringing in those east or northeasterly winds in the winter of 1916-1917. Very cold World War I winter. The next above normal hurricane season is 1951, and this is winter of 1951-1952, with below average heights to our east, above average heights to our west. Quite a few cold snaps in the winter of 1951-1952. The next winter is 1966-1967, following the above average hurricane season, but not hyper. The above average hurricane season of 1966. This is a wet winter and one of the milder winters of the 1960s too. Not much in way of cold weather during 66-67. A long gap to 2000, our next above average hurricane season. There were probably hyperactive hurricane seasons, but the next above average but not hyper hurricane season was 2000. And we've talked about this in the first analogues package, of course. The winter of 2000-2001 has a below average heights, a low pressure in the Atlantic, has above average heights in the north, very nearly a cold winter, but away from Scotland. It wasn't a particularly cold winter, but it did have its moments. The next above average hurricane season is 2008, and the winter of 08-09 starts off the run of cold winters from 08-09 to 12-13, and this one again with above average heights to the north, below average heights to the south, and winds coming in from an easterly direction. Very cold spell through the first half of February 2009. Next up is 2011. The above average hurricane season of 2011 was followed by the winter of 2011-2012. We just saw it in part one of this winter update, with above average heights to the west of us, below average heights to the east. That's one of the milder winters, or it's a milder winter in that run of cold winters from 08-09 to 12-13. Next up we have 2012-2013. So the hurricane season of 2012 was above average but not hyper. Interestingly, a lot of people think that was a really big hurricane season in 2012, but it isn't classified as a hyperactive hurricane season. This one, of course, it's a cold winter with below average heights to our south and east. Blocking is up to the north. It gets colder and colder, culminating in the coldest March since the Victorian era. Then we've got 2016-2017, very anti-cyclonic winter, this one, with above average heights centred over the top of the country, bringing lots of dry weather and pretty mild winter too. And then finally we have got the winter of last year, 2018-2019, really bizarre winter with a strong blocking towards Greenland, but also high pressure around Spain. And so again, this just leaves us with a mild but also pretty dry winter in 2018-2019. Putting all of that together, this is how all Decembers combined are looking following above average but not hyperactive hurricane seasons. So for December, it is a westerly signal with above average heights to our south, below average heights to the north, feeding in westerly winds. So on average, these Decembers can be expected to be quite mild, but things get much more interesting in January, I should say, when we tend to take the above average heights away to our north and northwest and set up a trough of below average heights to our south and southeast, and so that can leave us bringing in those cold east or northeasterly winds. January looks a much colder signal following above average hurricane seasons compared to December. All February's combined looks like that, so an anticyclonic signal with all February's combined. Probably not overly cold, although you'd only have to move that high pressure a little bit further north to get into a colder type pattern. And then all marches combined, we do have some above average heights towards Greenland, below average heights in the Atlantic. Looks like we're reverting back to a westerly flow. Not a particularly good analogues package for a cold winter following above average hurricane seasons, but not hyperactive hurricane season. It would be interesting to see the contrast between above average and hyperactive. I suspect the hyperactive hurricane season would lead to a greater cold setup, but of course until we have a hyperactive hurricane season, we won't be able to look at that, but possibly we did look at it in 2017, I'm not sure. Finally, putting all of that together, this is how all winters combined are looking following above average but not hyperactive hurricane seasons. It does have a bit of a blocking pattern actually, with high pressure up to the north and low pressure down to the southeast. I think a lot of that is what's going on in January, though. A lot of that is going to be what's happening in January, which out of all of the winter months looks like it's shaping up to be colder when we have an above average hurricane season. But on the face of it, that's actually not a bad analogue for a colder winter, really. It does have quite a strong blocking signal up to the north of us, but again, remember, a lot of that is what's going on in January. And we're done. So finally, just say if you've enjoyed this 8th Winter 2019-2020 update, and you've been enjoying all the winter updates so far this season, please can you consider becoming a patron for GWV. We've got 65 patrons so far. Hello, and a big thank you to our 65 patrons. So if you'd like to become a patron of GWV and give us an ongoing monthly donation, all you need to do is come to the GWV's Patreon page, sign up for a Patreon account, and then you give an ongoing monthly donation from anything from $1 a month up, which you're helping us to pay for GWV.com. Thank you so much to everybody for doing that. Alternatively, you can give a one-off donation through PayPal. So if you would like to do that, just come to GWV's PayPal page, sign into your PayPal account, and you give a one-off donation through GWV to help us pay for the website, keep the content online, and that would be absolutely great. Thanks to everybody for their donations through PayPal, and also big thank you to all of our patrons. Really is very special for what you're doing for GWV. Right, we've talked for an hour and 4 minutes, another true epic. I thought it was going to be a long one because it took a lot of explaining, especially that third and final part with the hurricane season. But I want to do a little bit on Atlantic hurricanes because it's something that we've not done a lot of over the winter updates. As I say, I think we looked at it in 2017, which was hyperactive. So that would tell us, I suppose, if we went back to that. And the videos are still on the YouTube channel if you go back far enough, and also at GWV.com. That would tell us whether the hyperactive hurricane seasons are sort of better set up to be colder than the above average hurricane seasons that we just looked at. But anyway, that's it for the 8th Winter 2019-2020 update. This video will be placed on the winter updates and forecast page with a written summary going over everything that we've discussed in the video, and I'll get that up for you around 8 o'clock this evening. We've got the ECMDF Metro France and DWD season model update coming up for you around 2 o'clock this afternoon. An hour after that, around 3, we'll have the third written update for Christmas. I'm going to be doing a live stream talking about this winter update on YouTube between 5 and 6 o'clock this evening. So if you've got any questions, or if you want to let me know what you thought to this update, I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to let me know what you thought, then you can do that on YouTube between 5 and 6 o'clock. But at 1 hour and 6 minutes, it's time for me to go. So thank you so much for sticking with this video for the past hour. Hope you found it interesting and informative. And yeah, that's it. So thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.